Good evening and welcome to the Telegraph Journal and Rogers TV presentation of the local campaign Candidates Debate for the riding of Tobique-Mactaquac. I'm your moderator, Mike Gange, and we are coming to you from the Centre Communautaire Sainte-Anne in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Today's debate will focus on the federal issues in Tobique-Mactaquac as the people of the riding select a new member of Parliament in the federal election on Monday, October 19th, 2015. The order of the candidates has been determined by a draw prior to them coming onto the stage. Joining me are the candidates Robert Kitchen, Terry Wishart, Richard Bragdon, and TJ Harvey. Next, please welcome our panelists for the evening. First, we have Kevin Worrell from Up 93.1 and Adam Hurras, from the Telegraph Journal, both journalists for media outlets in Fredericton. The rules of the debate are as follows. Each candidate will begin with a 30-second introduction opening statement, and then the first candidate will be asked several questions from one of our panelists. The candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. Each of the remaining candidates will also have 60 seconds to provide a rebuttal response. After all candidates have commented, there will be 2-minute and 30-second moderated discussion on the question. All candidates will be encouraged to participate in that part of the discussion. As the moderator, I'll guide the discussion to the best of my ability. Tonight, we'll attempt to ask as many questions as possible during our broadcast. As we near the end of the debate, the open discussion may be altered slightly in order to ensure all candidates have equal time for closing statements. The closing statements will be delivered in reverse order, and each candidate will be given 1 minute for their final remarks. First, we begin then with the introductions. Let's begin with Robert Kitchen.
Hello everyone, I'm Robert Kitchen. I am the NDP candidate for the riding of Tobique-Mactaquac. I was born in Woodstock and spent my grade school years in Mactaquac and the summers at Skiff Lake. After high school, I went on to study at St. Thomas University, where I received a degree in economics with a business option. Then I moved to South Korea, where I taught English as a second language for several years, and I traveled all around the world. Now, I live in Mactaquac and work here in Fredericton in sales.
Thank you, Robert Kitchen. Our next candidate is Terry Wishart.
Thank you. I come before you here today not to seek a job, but to further what I've been doing most of my life from an early age. It's clearly a time that all Canadians begin to understand that we cannot advance the needs of Canadians by continuing to satisfy the wants of corporations over people. My mandate is clear if I'm made a Member of Parliament for Tobique-Mactaquac. I want to continue to contribute to creating a diversified economy that puts people to work now instead of waiting.
Thank you, Terry Wishart.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Richard Bragdon.
Thank you, Mike. I was born in Woodstock, been raised in the Mactaquac area, now live in Keswick Ridge with my wife Crystal and our 3 children. And I'm wanting to continue the excellent representation that we have had for the last nearly 10 years. A great example has been set by our outgoing Member of Parliament, and I hope to have the honor and privilege of continuing in that same model of representation, of being approachable, accessible, hardworking, and someone who will bring a common sense perspective to the issues facing our country.
Thank you, Richard Bragdon. TJ Harvey.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening. I'm TJ Harvey, your federal Liberal candidate for Tobique-Mactaquac. My wife Tanya and I have 4 children, and principally, they are the major reason why I'm running. As parents, we want to ensure opportunities for our children and future generations to have a chance to work and live here at home. You'll hear many positions debated here tonight, but I want to assure you that along with the Liberal government, I'm committed to ensuring a strong local economy with vibrant agricultural and natural resource sectors. I look forward to sharing my ideas with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now over to our panelist, Adam Hurras.
Mr. Kitchen, the first question is for you. There's a multi-billion-dollar decision looming in New Brunswick. That's the Mactaquac Dam. Its impacts are arguably felt all the way up the St. John River and across the province. What should be done with it? Should it be refurbished, or should the river be restored? And is there a federal role in financing that decision?
I believe that as in a green energy renewable energy source, the dam should be brought back up and to A, refurbish, or B, rebuild the new dam. It follows in line with the NDP and our renewable energy source. And yes, I do believe that there is opportunities there for the federal government to help out with the province in establishing a continued energy source on the Mactaquac Dam.
Okay, let's go to Terry Wishart for your response.
Mactaquac Dam, the refurbishment versus other options is a very complex question. We need to take into account the impacts on community health, environmental health, as well as the cost per kilowatt hour that would be incurred if we were to go with a refurbishment of the dam that would be in the tune of $5 billion versus what we could be saving in kilowatt hours if we were to look at renewable technology and emerging technologies that can take the place of those. And we can be creating the shortfall of energy by buying that from other sources, for instance, Quebec. But it is my opinion, not the opinion of the Green Party, that we need to put all options on the table and all data needs to be collected and looked at in order to reach a really good understanding and decision.
Thank you, Terry Wishart. Over to you, Richard Bragdon, for your response.
Absolutely. I personally am totally in favor of the full refurbishment of the Mactaquac Dam and look forward to working with the stakeholders at the local service district level, as well as with the municipalities that will be affected, as well as with the province and the federal government to see what we can do to help move these things forward. Obviously, it's pending the full review process that's underway, and we're going to respect those results and findings, but with that, we want to make sure that we move ahead with this vitally important renewable energy source for our region and has the potential to create many more jobs as well, which would be great for our local economy and would make sense. So I look forward to working with the stakeholders in helping to move this project forward in a responsible manner.
Thank you, Richard Bragdon. TJ Harvey, your opinions.
I too fully support the refurbishment of the Mactaquac Dam, pending proper consultation with environmental groups, First Nations communities, local stakeholders, and of course the pending outcomes from the government itself, provincially. But I believe that the Mactaquac Dam refurbishment is a fine example of the potential for green energy delivery in this province. It's had a long history of green energy production, and I believe that with proper oversight, it'll continue to be a reliable energy source for not only New Brunswick, but for power distribution throughout the northeastern part of the United States for years to come.
Thank you, gentlemen. All interesting answers. Now, I'm going to back out, and I don't get to play the wrangler on this one, so let's open it to any of you. What are your thoughts? Any rebuttals on what anyone has said here today?
I'd like to begin. I think that my three opponents are of the mind that there's a refurbishment is in order. I take issue with that because the place of the federal government, if we were to look at the costs involved in terms of refurbishment, whether the federal government would get behind a loan guarantee is questionable, given the fact that if we are to outlay the costs for refurbishment versus other modes of energy production, that might give pause to the federal government in terms of giving us that necessary loan guarantee.
Other candidates?
I believe as a leader in this area that to bring jobs to the area, and we need to have the federal and provincial governments working together. We haven't seen that in the last 10 years with our Harper government. There has been the communication between the provinces and the federal government hasn't been open. So most definitely there is definitely a place for us as the federal government to help out with refurbishment.
Well, allow me to respond to that because, quite frankly, the federal government has shown on an energy project in a similar fashion, the Churchill Falls project in Newfoundland and Labrador, where they worked in conjunction on a major energy project and was able to work with the province and with the local municipalities to ensure that that project was able to go ahead. And I feel there is a record of that, but at the same time, our federal government understands that those closest to the situation at the local LSD and the municipalities and the provincial government are the ones that have the most localized and probably are best equipped to make the decisions at the local level.
TJ Harvey, did you have a final word on this?
Well, I'd just like to say that I believe that from what I understand, the Mactaquac refurbishment could create upwards of 5,000 jobs for 10 years. And as a strong partner for Tobique-Mactaquac, I fully support that. We need those local jobs in this area.
Thank you, candidates. Now to our panelist number 2, that's Kevin Worrell. Kevin?
Mr. Wishart, this question is for you. Aquaculture and agriculture, of course, are very large employers in our province, and your riding in particular is very large with agriculture. We're always hearing of recalls of food. We had one actually come down today, and the situation, of course, with the metal in PEI potatoes is very disturbing. What can the federal government do to ensure our food is safe to eat?
Well, first of all, I think the mandate of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency needs to be looked at very closely, because currently they're mandated to support industry in terms of marketing. That needs to be removed from the mandate of the Food Inspection Agency in order to guarantee that Canadians are not being exposed to a disease that might be as a result of agricultural business and large business at that. We do need to bring back food production at a local level and procurement from governments to be using these in government institutions, et cetera. But the Food Inspection Agency, their mandate is surely wanting since the Harper government has been put into power and taken that objectiveness away from the Food Inspection Agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bragdon?
Well, I believe obviously we need to work in conjunction with the Food Inspection Agency and continue to work with the agricultural sector from our region. I believe we produce some of the best produce in all of Canada and throughout much of the world. I must say I bear evidence of liking meat and potatoes, and there's not much better than Carleton County potatoes, York County produce, and our local agricultural sector is vibrant. It's vital, and we want to work with them to make sure that that continues to be a vibrant and obviously growing sector of our economy. And I think there is a common sense approach to dealing with this. It needs to be measured and balanced and work in conjunction with the Food Inspection Agency, of course, and with the Department of Agriculture, both at the provincial level and at the federal level, to ensure that our farmers and our producers have all the resources that they need to make sure good products are getting to the market.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Mr. Harvey?
I would like to say that this example of the needle in the potato and PEI is cause for concern. As of late, there's been some rumblings, small talk of the possible privatization of the Canada Food Inspection Agency, at least at the local level. And I think that this is a prime example of the reasons why we need proper government oversight with all these industries. I also think that it's high time that we as Canadians, especially in the agricultural sector, move to create a national center of excellence in agriculture. Now, I think Tobique-Mactaquac is perfectly positioned with the Agri-Food Canada infrastructure that's already existing here, plus the provincial extension infrastructure that's here, to deliver this type of service. And it'll allow us to deliver programs specific to farmers that allow us to not only continue to deliver the quality of produce that we have today, which is far and above the global standard, but to move forward as a country and be a superior partner.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Mr. Kitchen, your ideas on this?
Again, I believe that the agriculture and the government have to work together to come up with a solution for the problem. It's obviously it can be easily done. All nice cooperation with the industry and with the government regulatory boards. I believe that with the proper cooperation with each other, there should be an easy solution for this. And again, with our agriculture area, with potatoes in our area especially, we want to ensure that at all times that we have the top quality products leaving the area and there's no problems with it.
Well, thank you, candidates. Now, is there anything you'd like to rebut or address to any of your fellow candidates? We have 2 minutes.
The agriculture industry in Tobique-Mactaquac, it is an engine for a lot of job growth as well as the export of products. However, we are seeing a deleterious effect as a result of the chemicals that are being put on our produce in terms of its growth, as well as the depletion of topsoil. I mean, these are areas that we need to take a second look at in terms of being able to sustain agriculture in Tobique-Mactaquac, because our rivers are running muddy as a result of the I think, agribusiness going on in the region.
If I may, I really think that the real experts and those that are closest to the ground in regards to the needs in the agricultural sector are the farmers. And I've had the privilege over the last several months to visit many of the farmers and talk with the farmers in the various sectors up throughout the St. John River Valley and throughout Tobique-Mactaquac, and hearing their concerns, but also their hopes for the sector. And I think they can provide us with very valuable insight as to what is happening, what their needs are, and how we can work together in conjunction with them to improve the sector.
As somebody that grew up on a large-scale agricultural farm, I grew up on a large farm. We produced about 1,500 acres of seed potatoes, small grains. My wife and I are currently supply managed egg producers as well. I'd like to say that I've worked strategically within the agricultural sector my entire life, adult life, and I'm amazed at the amount of change that's gone on in that sector in the last 5 years. Companies like McCain's, HSF Foods, Cavendish, Old Dutch are doing tremendous work in nutrient management through the use of nutrient management specialists and drones and helicopter drones in order to photograph the landscape and monitor the changes in the environment throughout the year.
We're going to cut that part off, and that wraps up that part of the debate. Let's go back to Adam Harris for the next question.
Mr. Bragdon, the question's for you. Premier Brian Gallant says New Brunswick's not receiving its fair share of research and development funding from Ottawa. He says New Brunswick's not getting its proportional share regionally. Is that a fair criticism? And should the federal government provide more to New Brunswick in terms of R&D?
No, I believe that's not a fair criticism. In fact, the federal government under the Harper administration and under the Conservative leadership has actually increased transfers to provinces every year since coming into power. And they've done that in spite of the challenging economic headwinds that we're facing. They've been able to continue to increase the amount being transferred to New Brunswick each year. Now it's up to the provinces to allocate that. They've also invested substantially into R&D, and I know there's been some done at the local Potato Research Center. They've invested into research and development in various ways over the last nearly 10 years of government. But I think what's most important to understand is that in the midst of challenging economic times, this government was able to balance its budget, bring us back into surplus without cutting transfers to provinces like the previous Liberal government did when they faced a recession. They did it on the backs of the provinces through cutting the transfers to health and education and research, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Now over to Mr. Harvey.
As somebody that's grown up in agriculture and been committed to agriculture and the R&D that's associated with that, not only in R&D, but I've worked in large manufacturing as well, I can honestly say that over the past decade, we have not only not seen any growth in terms of R&D funding in this province, we have actually seen it gutted in this province. And we need look no further than another example, which is the Harper Conservatives and how they've neglected health care by refusing to meet with the First Ministers allowing health accord to lapse and introducing a per capita funding formula under the Health Canada Transfer Act that's drastically affecting our ability to deliver health care in this province. And over the next 10 years, it is going to mean over $700 million in absent transfer payments for health care in this province. Now, I know that that's not specific to R&D, but it's completely representative of the type of government that Stephen Harper has run in this province.
Perfect timing. Mr. Harvey, now to you, Mr. Kitchen.
Well, R&D, it starts with the biologist, the scientist. I mean, Harper government has brought in, muzzles on them. They aren't allowed to speak. They're not allowed to come out and tell people what's going on. Just for an example, I know it doesn't have to do with R&D, but talking about cutbacks, but we have oil coming across this country in rail cars, and we have the Harper government cutting back on the safety. An inspector, it used to be one inspector for every 335 containers. Now it's one inspector for 10,000 containers of oil coming across in rail cars. We have lakes, we have rivers that aren't protected anymore because of the Harper government. It's because the scientists, the environmentalists are all muzzled in this government, and they're not allowed to speak out.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Mr. Wishart.
With regard to R&D, I agree with TJ Harvey that there's been a failure in the Harper government to pay attention to, from a scientific point of view, in terms of investing time, money, and research and development in agriculture. But we also need to look at how we can be creating more diversified agricultural products and bringing them down to a local level where we can be putting people to work rather than it being a all or nothing large agribusiness type situation. We do need to be investing more in creating jobs in organics, as well as creating the necessary multipliers that will keep money in a community and generating jobs around other sectors within a local community.
Thank you, candidates. I had a sense that everybody else wanted to say something as well. So jump in. We have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mike. I've got to respond to both TJ and Robert. I must say, TJ, in regards to the health transfers, the amount being transfers to the provinces have gone up each year in the face of strong economic headwinds, and it's actually been the Gallant government provincially that has froze health spending at previous levels, though the amount transferred for health care has gone up 3% a year.
On a go-forward basis, over the next 10 years, due to the changes in the system, the Harper government, if re-elected, will lose this province $700 million in healthcare transfers. It's right there.
The transfers are going to continue to go up, and as our economy continues to prosper, under a balanced and a fair approach and a measured approach that the Harper government has brought forward to bring us back into budget surplus and keep the taxes on medium and low-income families at the lowest level in 50 years, that would be reversed under a federal Liberal government that wants to put us back into $10 billion a year deficits, and the only way to recapture that's through raising taxes on middle and low income families.
Saying surplus.
What I find interesting about that statement is that at a time when the economy was starting to stall, and we should have had money squirreled away for a rainy day due to the boom in the oil sector, Stephen Harper didn't have money squirreled away in the oil sector. And over the last 18 months, he has
TJ.
cut and cut and cut to
TJ.
scrimp up a surplus.
TJ,
No, he has.
that's categorically false. What has happened is we
And
have
we're not in
seen the
surplus
economy.
now.
Yes, we are.
No, we're not.
Absolutely.
We
Last
have
fiscal
no
year,
more
we had
GM stocks. We have no more GM
listen,
stocks.
A $1.9 billion surplus last year was recorded at the end of this fiscal year. We're in position of now $5.3 billion.
What did we
surplus.
sell to get that?
And that made up less than a third.
By the conservative definition of
still
surplus, which is
surplus.
2 quarters of
It's
negative
still
growth,
surplus. It's
2
still
quarters
surplus.
Gentlemen,
of negative growth
just for a second.
is the conservative government's definition of surplus.
TJ, you need to understand.
Okay, gentlemen,
We've done
let's
this.
go to Mr. Kitchen because he had something to add.
Sure.
How can you say surplus? You sold the GM stocks to get money. And you sold, and you took from the EI fund.
No, the E fund is solid. It's in good
Yeah,
shape.
it is good shape, but
Yes.
it doesn't need to be used to bail you guys out.
It wasn't used to bail us out. We have grown out of this. We've had, again, another month of growth. We've reversed the trend. We're well positioned. We're the envy of the world. We have the #1 reputation as a country in the world. We lead the G7 in debt to GDP ratio. We have the lowest tax rate in 50 years on low and medium income families in the midst of a global recession. I think this government has done relatively well compared to other nations. And if you guys took over, guess what? Massive deficits, massive spending, and large
It has
tax
nothing to do with the
increases.
Harper government. What about, it's the Bank of Canada and the rules and regulations that our Bank of Canada has in place.
So-
that's what brought us through in 08 through the recession.
What's amazing is it's contradictory. We have on one side, we're spending too much, you say. On the other side, we're saying we're not spending enough. You guys are contradictory. I wish you had a consistent position. That's what we need.
It's nice to see your passions and your fury on this. Let's go back to our panelist, Kevin Worrell. You have the next question.
I was going to ask about healthcare, but you pretty much covered that, so we'll just jump ahead here. we all saw what happened yesterday, massive rainstorm. Climate change is obviously here. No one can really deny that anymore. Our weather is changing. And some people would say Canada has had a less than stellar reputation out there when it comes to dealing with climate change. What can the federal government do to correct this? And this is for Mr. Harvey.
Well, North America could be and should be the most efficient and responsible energy producer in the world. We need to push for the next major step in the history of the North American Partnership, a clean energy environment agreement. Liberals believe that in collaboration with the provinces and territories, industry and civil society are essential to meeting our climate change goals. The Liberal Party is committed to stronger environmental oversight, meaningful emissions regulations, and tougher penalties for non-compliant people or companies. The Liberal Party is committed to creating a more robust federal environmental assessment process, and we're committed to ensuring that the government fully execute its constitutional duty to consult and respect Aboriginal peoples on projects of renews and assessments. All these measures are critical to building sustainable evidence-based environmental policy, and I feel that that's our duty, not only as a country, but as a member of the G7.
Mr. Kitchen?
Well, what can I say? We have one of the worst climate change programs right now in the world. Yesterday, in the storm, I had to get out and push a car through the water because it stalled. And the lady said, "Can you tell Harper about this?" Well, if you look at any plan, it's the NDP plan. It's 34% we have targeted for reduction. We have serious caps put in place for the major abusers. We are the ones that are standing up and that want change. The renewable energy sector is growing at a rate of 18% yearly. We need to get on board and start creating jobs through that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchen. Over to you now, Mr. Wishart.
The Green Party is committed to putting a cap on CO2 emissions by large polluters. It's important that we look at this event from yesterday. In some parts of New Brunswick, it was 6.5 inches of rain that we received. These weather events are only going to continue, and we do need to look at how we can be mitigating them by making sure that we're not going to be exporting raw bitumen products abroad and digging it up. We should be processing, if at all, oil products at the source. In terms of renewables, jurisdictions throughout the world, Germany, Vermont, even Nova Scotia, are creating investment mechanisms and have robust renewable energy sectors that are really moving their economies ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Wishart. And Mr. Bragdon.
Thank you for the question. And what I appreciate about it is that obviously we all are concerned about our environment. We need to be good stewards of the world that we've been entrusted with, and we want to make sure we provide good care. I have a young family, and at a very personalized level, we're very avid recyclers and do our part at that level locally, and I think everybody should be encouraged to do what we can to be responsible environmentally. But at the federal level, I really think it needs to be, and it bears noting that our government has seen a reduction in greenhouse gases for the first time in our modern history as a nation, while we were growing at a rate of 12.7% in the last 10 years of government. The Liberals talked a great game, and they signed a lot of accords, and they talked a great game on the environment, but their record was atrocious. Greenhouse gases kept going up. So what good is signing accords without a plan of implementation? I'd rather have and be a part of a party that actually produces results on the environment in a practical way that is attainable without damaging our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Gentlemen, good answers on all of those, and I can tell again there's some passion there. We're going to give you 2 minutes to have a go at anybody you want on what's their opinion on this.
Okay, we've got to stop, right, first off, we have to stop this division of it has to be the environment or it has to be the economy. It has to work together. We have to have a healthy environment to have a healthy economy. None of this split and divide, you're with us or you're against us type of thing. It's been going on for 10 years now. We need to move forward. It is stated right now starting in 1990 to 2030, the Conservative government will have a 14% reduction if they progress how they are right now. NDP, 34% reduction.
What's amazing, though, Rob, you've mentioned in a prior segment about rail transportation of oil. Well, we obviously and personally feel after the proper assessments and making sure the environmental overview and oversight is provided by the National Energy Board and National Energy Agency to make sure that all the safety protocols are in place, we want to see the Canada East Pipeline move forward. Your party and the Liberal Party, I can't make sense of the position. In one part of the country, you're saying, oh yeah, we're for the Canada East Pipeline, which is a much safer means of getting oil from one part of the country to another. And then in another region of the country, you say you're against the Canada East Pipeline. I think if we want to be efficient and protectors of the environment, we want to make sure we get it to market.
How can you say your
I
safety?
would just like to state for the record that Justin Trudeau is 100% behind the Energy East Pipeline, as am I, as your federal representative for the Liberal Party in the riding of Tobique-Mactaquac. Hey, just 1 second. I'll let you speak. And I don't think that I should be taking crib notes from a party who hasn't successfully built 1 foot of pipeline in the last 10 years.
We're going through a due process.
Or from another party, the opposition, who changed their thoughts on climate change like it's going out of style. This is coming from a party who advocated for selling off our own clean water.
Well, you talk about safety. 20%. You take government cut 20% of the rail safety division between 2010 and 2014.
Export pipelines need to be stopped.
You're talking about safety. You're cutting safety left and right here.
No, actually, I feel we need a balanced and a measured approach to the environment and the economy, and you can have both. And I believe our government has provided a balanced and a measured approach. We've produced results, we've reduced greenhouse gases, while at the same time growing the economy in difficult economic times. And I think that's the approach the people of Tobique-Mactaquac expect.
These issues are exciting and invigorating, that's for sure. Let's go back to our panel. Adam Huras, would you tell us your next question, please?
Mr. Kitchen, you brought up EI earlier. The Conservative government introduced changes to employment insurance in their most recent mandate, arguably in efforts to pair the unemployed with vacant jobs. But there was also concerns from the tourism industry and from seasonal industries. Wanted your position on whether employment insurances needed to be reformed again.
Unemployment insurance needs to be tweaked, yes. It's harder for people right now to get on unemployment insurance. There's less people that can get on it than there was before. There's a surplus there. We need to have more programs in there to train people while they're unemployed, educate them. The younger workforce, they need to be secure. They need to know that they can take that job and they have a chance that if they can stay in our country and work or stay in our area, that they have able to get the training and get on unemployment. The rules and regulations of getting on unemployment with the higher hours, I mean, it has to change. As our economy changes, the rules have to change with it. If you use rules from 1920, they're obviously not going to apply for now. So obviously, as you grow as an economy, the changes and the rules for EI have to change with it.
Thank you. Robert Kitchen. Now over to Terry Wishart and your opinion on this issue.
I agree with Robert Kitchen that there is a surplus in EI, but we need to start looking at the subsidization of large corporations and the removal of those from companies and organizations that don't need that money. They're wealthy enough. Money that can be channeled into education, skills development, and other areas that require money like hospitalization, senior care. There's a large dividend to be had if we start removing subsidies from companies that don't need it. And that as well is going to bolster our ability to help pick people up and help them in terms of in the situations that they might find themselves in and around unemployment. I might also add that the current shape of our economy in a petroleum state, which is overwhelming a petroleum state, these petroleum states marginalize and diminish women's rights. We need to be able to help all segments, including women, the poor, and students and youth.
Thank you, Terry Wishart. Richard Bragdon.
EI is obviously a very vital program for our entire country, and we want to ensure that it is always there for Canadians when they need it. And thankfully it is, and we want it to continue to be there. But the real issue is we want to make sure we have a solid economy that provides more opportunities for employment for people in our riding. Obviously, I hear a lot at the doors in communicating with people the concern regarding out-migration to other provinces to find work. We'd love to see more of our children and our family members and neighbors be able to stay in our region and find good, meaningful employment. So part of that is to make sure nationally our economy is stable, that we have a balanced approach to the economy, keep our budgets in line, keep the taxes low. And I'm glad to say that the tax rate on small and medium-sized businesses will go down from 11 to 9% under our government in the next mandate if we receive it. And also, we are ranked #1 by Forbes magazine as the #1 place in the world for small and medium-sized businesses to come and set up. And I think that's a great accomplishment. We need to build on that and continue to do the hard work to get
Thank you,
people
Mr. Bragdon. And now let's go to TJ Harvey.
I'd like to state that as a farmer, a small business owner, and somebody that's worked in the manufacturing sector, I understand the dynamics around unemployment, especially in rural sectors, and rural economies, and industries that use a lot of seasonal labor. I know when I grew potatoes, I had around 25 full-time employees, but they were what I considered to be, some were full-time, probably 10, 15 were probably what I would consider to be part-time full-time. So that means they worked probably 9 months a year, but it was a week off here, it was a few days off here. They basically worked all year round, and they would draw on their unemployment claims when they needed to do that. And I think that that's fundamentally what unemployment is there for, but I think it's really important that we focus on a regional basis, geographically, so that we make the programs fit and suit the industries and the respective businesses in the different geographic regions of the country, not just try to paint everybody into a box and say that the unemployment rules need to just fit them one way, because there's different ways to do it.
Thank you, TJ Harvey. Back to you, panel. Back to you, candidates. Is there anything you'd like to address to each other? We have about 2 minutes for this segment.
I think we need to begin looking at a diversified economy that's going to keep people in work. I mean, sitting around and waiting for projects like Energy East or shale gas, as an example, which are going to be deleterious to our environment, that are going to be producing, in the case of the pipeline, 15% of a chance of a rupture within the first 5 years. That's unacceptable. We could be putting people to work right now if we were to advance a green economy where we can be saving energy around efficiency in our homes, building infrastructure that is in keeping with that same energy savings. And putting people to work now rather than waiting. It's unacceptable that we're putting our eggs all into a petroleum product basket.
You said, Richard, that if you get elected, you've had 10 years. We've been shipping our kids out west for 10 years now to work. You've had 10 years to build the economy here in New Brunswick. You've had 10 years to get things going, but you haven't. Now you're going to start, if you get elected this time? Where were you the last 10 years?
Well, Rob, I'm going to remind you, though, can you imagine if we'd followed the pattern that your leader and your party has laid out over the last 10 years? We'd have had massive, huge deficits, because every time we brought in deficit spending to help invigorate the economy at that time, and it was structured, it was measured, it was targeted, you folks opposed it and criticized us for it. Now that we've reached balance and we've got surplus and we're strategically investing, in fact, investments in infrastructure in Canada is at all-time highs, and they have been at that level for the longest and most sustainable period of time in Canadian history. We have put record investments in infrastructure and helping provinces to move things forward. We need to continue that. We need to continue to work together to make sure that we have an environment where people want to come and do business, not have a place. Because anywhere that the NDP has been in power at the provincial level,
I have to cut
those
you off,
economies
gentlemen.
have struggled.
Thank you, gentlemen. Obviously, another spot where we could have a long and vigorous debate. Let's go back to Kevin Worrell. You have another question for us.
This question is for Mr. Wishart. Today, 8 Aboriginal groups in British Columbia are extremely upset because Ottawa approved the Northern Gateway pipeline project. They say their concerns were simply not heard by the federal government. Relations between the federal government and First Nations have been strained for years now. What can be done to rectify this?
The Green Party believes that we need to honor the findings of the Kelowna Accord. In the question of consultation, we're not showing the fiduciary responsibility of the Harper government in recognizing title in treaties that did not give away land, They were friendship friendship treaties in the most part, especially here in the east as well in the west. There is there's a thumbing of the nose, so to speak, to our First Nations and Indigenous people around their rights and due consultation, which is not being given to them.
Thank you, Terry Wishart. Richard Bragdon.
Well, obviously, we want to consult whenever possible and however possible and make sure all the stakeholders are at the table, including First Nations, as well as the provincial stakeholders and obviously those in the private sector and all sectors of the economy that will be affected. I don't believe, though, that we can move forward as a country by saying no to everything. We have to be able to say yes to some things in a responsible way and make sure we do everything we can to protect our environment and ensure safety and regulations are what they need to be. And Canada does have some of the strictest environmental regulations in many jurisdictions. And I'm hoping that we can continue to move forward with some projects like this in a responsible way to make sure our economy continues to grow.
Thank you, Richard Bragdon. Now, TJ Harvey.
Well, as I've been out campaigning all over the riding in Tobique-Mactaquac, I visited both First Nations communities. I visited the Tobique First Nation as well as the Woodstock First Nation. And what I hear from them fundamentally is that First Nations children are falling farther and farther behind, and that's due in short to chronic underfunding of their education system. So as a Liberal government, we would like to invest $2.6 billion for core First Nations education over the next 4 years to help them address this issue. As well, having visited these communities, I see that there's a definite lack of infrastructure spending there, housing, social programs, and I think that socially we have a fiduciary duty to uphold our First Nations people as they were the first here and work constructively with them. And that doesn't matter whether it's on pipelines, doesn't matter if it's on other types of natural resource development, or creating social programs that are specific to their community and to their needs.
Thank you, TJ Harvey. Robert Kitchen.
Again, you're with us or you're against us. I've been to the First Nations, Tobique and Woodstock. They've said all they want is consulted. They want to sit at the table. They're not saying no. They just want to sit down and be able to talk. They want the environmentalists there. They want to be there. Everybody at the table. That's what needs to happen. They want the same things as us. There's no difference, us and against them. We're all one people. We're one country. And that's where this problem starts. We need to unite as one and move forward. We need to sit down at the table and we need to talk. We did have great environmental regulations and rules in this country until Mr. Harper started taking them away. So we need to bring back our scientists. We need to bring back our First Nations communities and work together to move this country forward.
Thank you, Robert Kitchen. So now, gentlemen, I know you have lots to say, and we have 2 minutes that we can wrap up this discussion. So do you have some more passions and insights?
Title is title. The rights of our Indigenous people are being ignored for the benefit of a few and large corporations who are threatening to overrun their territories. It's unacceptable, and we do need to be taking them into fair and meaningful consultation around these large-scale projects. It's unacceptable that they're being put to the sideline for the benefit of really fossil fuel industries and resource-laden industries when we could be doing a great deal better in terms of job creation, both for First Nations as well as all people.
I am coming from a background with having had the privilege of getting to know First Nations people on a very personal level. In my previous capacity as a minister, I had the opportunity to work with several First Nations people across this region, and I count several of them very dear friends. And I appreciate so much what they have to offer and what they can bring to the table. I feel like, again, though, it isn't an us versus them. It doesn't have to be an us versus them. I believe in consultation and in moving forward. And I think by doing that and working together, we also can get to a place where we can say yes to some things. It's easy to say no to everything. But in a modern economy, in where we are today, in the global environment that we're in, it's going to take, yes, people moving forward saying, we can do this, and we can do it together, and we can do it environmentally responsibly.
Yes, that's the difference. We can do it together, but we can't be if it's not forced on people. If they're at the table, they will join in. They will work towards the goal.
Well, I don't think anything is going to be forced on people. I
think
just
when
don't believe that.
I fully believe that when it comes to First Nations communities, that we need a very inclusive approach that takes into account what First Nations want and need from government, as well as a very collaborative approach from government on both sides of the aisle to work together to address these issues with First Nations communities.
Obviously another passionate issue and one that enjoys a great debate. Let's go again to our panelist, Adam Harris. You have another question for us.
This is for Mr. Bragdon. You brought up Energy East previously. There's several mega projects on the horizon for New Brunswick. Energy East is one. The Sisson Tungsten Mine is another within the, I guess, region of this riding. Wanted your position on those two projects and whether they are needed to go ahead in order to resurrect New Brunswick's economy.
I do believe in responsible resource development. Obviously, making sure that we do due diligence to protect our environment and to ensure the safety of our waters and our fishways. But we do need to move forward with some of these projects because they can employ people with good paying wages and allow them to come and move and set up their families and buy goods. And it's not just the direct jobs from the industries themselves, but it's the spin-offs that affect the smaller communities and the local areas. It will allow schools to have children in them again. It will allow stores to be able to sell more of their products. It's going to allow our dealerships across the region to be able to sell more vehicles, for example, and to be able to invigorate our local economy at a level that we need. I feel, again, I need to reiterate this, we cannot continue to say no to every project. We have to say, how can we do this efficiently and effectively? And if we're going to be principled and we're against resource development, and we say that across the board, say, no, we don't want this type of resource development anymore, then we got to carry that forward all the way. Then you're going to say, okay, we don't want any transfers coming from resource development either.
Have to cut you off mid-sentence. TJ Harvey, your turn.
As somebody that comes from a very rural, resource-based community, I know and understand the issues surrounding not only First Nations concern with project development, but with stakeholder issues concerning resource development. So that's the everyday guy that picks up his lunchbox and goes to work at McCain's, or picks up his lunchbox and he goes to the Irving Mill. These people, they want to be consulted. They want to be involved. They want to be part of the process. They want to be engaged. And I can honestly say that every meeting that I've gone to concerning resource development, people are there. They come out in hundreds. They're engaged, they're interested, and they want what's fundamentally best for the province. And I too agree that we cannot wait on these projects, whether it's the Sisson Mine, pipeline development. We need these projects in our communities. We need them now, and the spin-offs from them will be immense. I know I went to elementary school in a small community called Juniper. There's 86 kids when I went to school there 15 years ago. And that school is closed now. It closed 2 years ago with 16 kids in it.
Thank you, TJ Harvey. Over to you now, Robert Kitchen.
No one's saying no to these projects. They've got to be done in a way where the environment is safe, the work conditions for the people are safe. Harper's government says that they're looking after our lakes and waters, but then I don't understand, because 20% of the fresh water is in Canada. Before Harper came in power, if you had a canoe and it could float in a waterway, it was protected. Harper changed that. Now there's only 97 lakes and 62 rivers across all of Canada that are protected. In this province, the only part that is protected is the bottom portion of the St. John River. So the Tobique, the Skiff Lake, Eel River Lake, all the lakes, all the waterways in our riding are not protected by this Harper government.
Robert Kitchen, thank you. Now Terry Wishart.
With regard to the Sisson mine, there's a lack of transparency around Sisson. For one thing, they do want to build a large tailings pond, which could very well put waterways such as the Nashwauk River at risk. They're not putting on the table a dry tailings type activity, but one that's going to be immerse those tailings in water, which is, in the Green Party's estimation, unacceptable. With regard to Energy East, back to the First Nations question, there's already telltale signs, actually more than telltale signs, that the First Nations, be it Mohawk, the Maliseet, the Mi'kmaq, are absolutely against Energy East. It's an export pipeline. It presents a boom and bust type economy situation where we're not going to be having long-term maintained jobs. And there's no secondary or tertiary processing of that oil product. It's going to be put on tankers and shipped overseas to places where they can process it without environmental regulations.
Thank you, Terry Wishart. Well, gentlemen, we don't have time now for a debate back and forth on that issue, but we're going to start to wrap up now in reverse order. That means, TJ Harvey, you get the final words, a minute and 30 seconds on your closing statements.
I would like to thank Rogers for organizing tonight's debate, and I would like to thank our moderator, Mr. Mike Gange, as well as the panelists, Adam Hurass and Kevin Worrell, for providing candidates an opportunity to share their opinions and issues that matter most to Tobique-Mactaquac. I would like to ask you as viewers, are you proud of the Harper government? Are you worried about our future? Is this the Canada that you imagined 10 years ago? Looking back over the past 10 years, I believe that it's time for change. Harper has taxed the working class to benefit the rich. Harper has abandoned health care. He's neglected climate change and ruined our rivers and oceans. Harper's canceled the National Child Care Program. He's reduced the old age security, hurting low-income seniors. Harper's ignored First Nations, failed our veterans, muzzled women's advocacy groups, and destroyed Canada's reputation on the world stage. He has implied that Atlantic Canadians are lazy and breed a culture of defeatism. Stephen Harper has brought Canadian democracy to an all-time low, having been the first Prime Minister to be found in contempt of Parliament, having shut down Parliament twice, falsified legal documents, and having some of his closest friends and advisors be convicted criminals. I want to return Canada to the country that it once was, the envy of the world. I want to stand for a party that believes in shared prosperity, leaving no one behind. I want to belong to a team with a proven record of pride, financial stability, and social conscience. I want to stand with Justin Trudeau, a leader who has a vision for real change in this country.
Thank you, TJ Harvey. Richard Bragdon, over to you for closing ideas.
Thank you, moderator and panelists and fellow colleagues, and you in the audience. Thank you for being here. And thank you to those of you who are watching. I appreciate so much the opportunity to have had this vigorous discussion and be able to share with you many ideas. We have an important choice facing us as Canadians on the 19th, and I ask that you would dutifully consider the alternatives and look at and ask this question of yourselves. Where else in the world would you have rather lived in the last 10 years of tremendous global uncertainty than right here in Canada? We are the envy of the world to this day. We have the #1 reputation in the whole world. We have the lowest tax rate on low and middle income families in the last 50 years. We're rated the #1 in the G7 for debt to GDP ratio. We have balanced the budget. We now have a $5.3 billion surplus in the face of tremendous economic headwinds that has been done not through cuts to transfers in the province, but by a balanced and a measured approach, by a steady hand at the tiller during these uncertain times. I believe we, as the residents of Tobique-Mactaquac, need to think very carefully and make sure that we continue locally in the pattern of representation that we've had, and that has been so excellently represented by Mr. Mike Allen over the last 10 years. We want to continue in that pattern, and I hope to be hardworking, obviously approachable, respond to your calls and emails, and work hard on your behalf as someone who's lived here all my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Bragdon. Terry Wishart.
Thank you, and thank you for the panelists, and thank you to Rogers TV. The Green Party, we want to begin looking at Canada through a different lens. There's much we can be doing in terms of making sure that all Canadians are treated fairly, that everyone has a roof over their head and has a guaranteed livable income. Canada has a great deal to offer the world, yes, but we can also be offering the people of Canada a great deal more in terms of job creation. Rather than being narrow in scope, we can have a diversified economy that puts more people to work now, that saves us energy, and also creates an environment where the world will come to Canada in terms of answers. There's much we can be doing in terms of diversifying the economy, and building a resilient economy that is not subject to the boom and bust cycle of the oil and gas and other resource-intensive industries. We can be creating jobs locally in our communities where dollars found to generate much more in terms of wealth within a given community. And as well, we can be creating jobs both in the food sector around food security, as well as...
I have to cut you off, Terry
yes,
Wishart.
certainly.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And now, Robert Kitchen, your closing statements.
Thanks for Rogers for having us here tonight. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. A vote for Robert Kitchen on the 19th. It's a vote for no wedge politics. Unite our country as one. Stop dividing it. It's a vote for our farmers so we don't lose our farms in the local areas. It's a vote for $105 million for the forestry sector. It's a vote for daycare. It's a vote for national housing strategy. Support Canadian added value jobs instead of sending our resources elsewhere. Aggressive greenhouse gas caps. Strong environment. The end of fossil fuel subsidies. Repeal of C-51, C-24, and of C-377. Also, Canada used to be #1 in peacekeeping in this great world that we live in. Now we're 68th. Restoration of old age security to 65. Lift 200,000 seniors out of poverty. Strong funding for our CBC. Anew, strong relationships with our First Nations. Build a Canada that everyone will be proud of. But what I do ask for out there, everybody, is to vote. If any election, your vote's going to count, this one is going to count. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, that brings to a conclusion our debate for tonight. On behalf of Rogers TV and Telegraph Journal, we'd like to thank all of our candidates, Robert Kitchen, Terry Wishart, Richard Bragdon, and TJ Harvey, for their participation in tonight's debate, along with our panelists, Kevin Worrell from Up 93.1 and Adam Harris from the Telegraph Journal, for providing the questions. Please remember to vote on Monday, October the 19th, and a small closing thought: no matter which party a candidate may represent, we have to admire their commitment to public service one way or the other. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, candidates. It's been a pleasure to have you here.